may well be their truth. Fine. How do we get to the bottom of what's going on by asking Hillary Clinton about UFOs and Pizzagate? Lauren?
Well, those topics did come up, and there are things within the Epstein file that leads to these questions.
Sometimes a single question exposes the deeper problem inside a political investigation. When lawmakers claim they are searching for truth, the public expects serious evidence, clear reasoning, and focused questioning. But when topics like UFOs and internet conspiracies suddenly appear in a congressional discussion about a trafficking case, the conversation changes. What begins as an inquiry into accountability quickly starts raising another question entirely. Are we actually getting closer to the truth or drifting further away from it?
Now, what do you think you need in this situation? I feel like it's been ignored. Why aren't you guys calling for the Attorney General to explain why so much was redacted, why the law wasn't followed? Most recently, with what we're being told, I can't substantiate it, but that allegations that involved President Trump were removed and put back and maybe changed. Doesn't that have to be explained?
Well, the Attorney General is violating the law, right? We passed a law that was signed in December saying you had to release all of the files, right? So, she went before the Judiciary Committee and she just evaded the question the whole time and just attacked members of the committee. But I would like her to come before us. We actually tried to hold her in contempt too. If you're going to hold the Clintons in contempt, hold her in contempt as well, right? Because she's covering up just as much. Hold other people who have not been responsive or given us more in contempt. But that's not what's happening. I think we need to stop playing politics, partisan politics with this, and treat everyone the same to get to the answers that we need.
Let me ask you something, and Suhas, and I'm going to ask you the same thing, Lauren. There's the old adage, the cops say, hey, you, stop. And the guy runs. And then they chase him down and they grab him. He goes, I didn't do anything. They say, well, why did you run? That is one version of why Bondi removed information about allegations against President Trump. The other version of it is the end of that story that we never hear, which is the guy says, stop. He runs. They catch him. He says, I didn't do anything. They say, why did you run? And he says, because I know what you guys do to people that you catch.
Now the discussion begins shifting toward a deeper argument about motive.
That is the second version, that the reason that they may have finessed some of the allegations against President Trump is because they know you guys are on a jihad to take them down. What do you think of that suggestion?
If the president did nothing wrong and has nothing to hide, then he should release all of the files. It's as simple as that, but that's not what has happened. In fact, he's done the opposite. He has not been transparent with the American people. Now we have evidence that some of the files not released was stuff about him. So again, if he did nothing wrong, then just release the files. You can protect victims in doing so, but there's 2.5 million files here, and not all of them are protecting victims. The victims themselves have said that.
Lauren, is it unfair of me to say, if there was a D after this guy's name instead of an R as President of the United States, and you learned that the sitting Attorney General had removed some allegations and then put them back, wouldn't you be jumping up and down?
Well, we are looking to see if things were removed. We've also heard from the victims directly who exonerated President Trump, saying that he did nothing wrong. Also, President Trump answers questions from the press on this very topic regularly. Hours of questions have been asked of him, and this is something that he answers to the press. He talks to the press on a daily basis. So President Trump isn't somewhere where we cannot reach him, cannot hear from him, cannot have him explain. I think that is much different than folks who are unreachable, who take 7 months to actually comply with our committee while we are trying to work in good faith with them to get responses and get their participation.
But the debate quickly moves into a question about double standards.
So that is a category with President Trump. And Chris, this is not a bipartisan issue for me. This is about women who were trafficked. This is important to me.
Understood.
And I want whoever was involved in this to be held accountable. There have been victims who came before the Oversight Committee and have had press conferences at the United States Capitol that said President Trump did nothing wrong. So he has been exonerated by some of those victims. And if there is more that is going to come out, then let it come out. I want everything released in totality. You know, you've already heard the frustrations that many of us are having. Even when we go to the DOJ, there are redactions under the redactions. The files that we are supposed to see redacted, and we aren't looking for very inappropriate images of children, but there are names that we want to see. And and that is very problematic for me as well. I have been talking with the DOJ about getting those released, and there still needs to be more information to come out on this.
I challenge you on 2 points. One is that he takes questions about this all the time. He hasn't told us anything except what he wants to tell us, which the president is very good at designing his message and repeating.
Too.
Look, that's what pros do. I mean, especially in a deposition setting. That's why I don't know why you do it this way. Anybody who's sophisticated, who's sitting next to their attorney, is going to answer questions in a very specific way about this. But, you know, the president's saying, the second point that I challenge is he hasn't been exonerated. Exonerated means that we have reviewed the facts and you are, in fact, innocent. Not we can't make the case, not there's not enough proof.
And then the conversation suddenly takes an unexpected turn.
But you literally did nothing wrong. We do not know that about him or really anybody.
And I'm just saying in the opinion of these victims that told us he did nothing wrong. So I'm not saying in a court of law he was exonerated.
To them. To them, I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like, to them, that may well be their truth. Fine. How do we get to the bottom of what's going on by asking Hillary Clinton about UFOs and Pizzagate, Lauren?
Well, you know, those topics did come up, and there are things within the Epstein file that leads to these questions. These files open up a whole mess, a whole trove of questions to go down. And, you know, Hillary Clinton being connected so tightly with John Podesta, who's connected with Anthony Weiner, and all of these things, they all kind of tie together, especially when you're talking about women who are being trafficked. So this isn't to highlight some big, vast conspiracy about a pizza parlor, but I think there needs to be questions, and I asked some questions on this topic that should be explained. There wasn't an explanation given, of course, and then other members
about
certainly
Pizzagate?
asked about UFOs. I'm sorry?
And UFOs? Like, what did you want to know about UFOs and Pizzagate?
Well, I think everybody
that
wants
would
to know
matter
about
to survivors?
UFOs. I did not ask that question, but I mean, there certainly are questions out there, and there was connections within the Epstein files that led to those questions. There are 3 million files there. You can go a lot of different ways with
I know,
the
but it's
information
like,
that's in there.
You know, if we want people to take this seriously and believe it's not a fishing expedition,
She actually
it's like
seemed
somewhere
pretty inquisitive about it. She was interested herself.
I'm sure she is. As long as it doesn't involve her, why not be interested? But Suhas, I feel like somewhere Kevin Bacon is like looking over his shoulder because he's going to get connected to this also. Do you have to be careful about how far down the rabbit hole you go with this?
I just want to get all the evidence out. If you're talking about the Epstein case generally, we don't know how deep it goes to begin with. We're not just talking about sex trafficking, although that's horrible, but we're now talking about financial crimes. We're talking about state secrets being shared, talking about heads of state and former heads of states all over the world. This is really bad stuff, and I think the public wants to know how the cover-up was able to happen and how we can prevent it from ever happening again. So I think we need to go as deep as we can and let the facts be out there and let the people decide, and maybe let the courts decide if we need to press charges against people.
Right. You're going to have trouble with that because of the statute of limitations. You guys would have to come together and draft
Let's
a
change that,
statute.
though. We've got laws to change that now, or at least propose.
I'm on board. Let's do it.
At the center of this discussion is a difficult question that extends far beyond a single political figure. The Epstein case has always existed at the intersection of crime, power, and secrecy. It involves wealthy individuals, political elites, and institutions that many people already distrust. Because of that, every new piece of information immediately becomes part of a much larger political narrative. But the exchange we just watched highlights something important about how investigations can evolve once politics enters the picture. On one side, there are demands for transparency and the release of every file connected to the case. On the other side, there are concerns that accusations themselves may be driven by political motives rather than verified evidence. And then there is a third problem that often appears in high-profile investigations. When speculation begins mixing with legitimate questions, topics like conspiracy theories, internet rumors, or unrelated controversies can easily blur the line between serious inquiry and distraction. When that happens, it becomes harder for the public to separate what is actually proven from what is simply suggested. Chris Cuomo's questioning in this conversation is focused on that exact tension. His argument is not necessarily about defending one political side or attacking another. Instead, he keeps returning to the same principle. If the goal is accountability, then the standards of evidence must remain consistent. Claims require proof. Accusations require verification. And words like exonerated have specific meanings that cannot be redefined depending on political convenience. At the same time, the broader concern raised by the guest reflects another reality. The Epstein case itself is extraordinarily complex. It spans decades, crosses international borders, and involves networks of influence that are still not fully understood. Many of the victims have said publicly that powerful people escaped scrutiny for years. That is why the demand for transparency continues to grow. So the real issue is not simply about one politician, one party, or even one investigation. It is about whether the public can still trust that major cases involving powerful figures will be examined with the same seriousness and standards applied to everyone else. Because when investigations become political battlegrounds, the risk is that the search for truth slowly gets replaced by the search for advantage. And that brings us to the most important question. What do you think about this exchange? Did this debate bring the public closer to understanding the Epstein case, or did it reveal how easily political narratives can shape the conversation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy detailed breakdowns of major political debates like this one, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next analysis.